Okay, we're going to take a look at the unwrap UVW modifier in 3ds Max 2019, and this will take a few videos to go over. So what I have is a primitive teapot. If you look at any of the primitives, they all have UV coordinates already assigned to them. But sometimes they're very hard to work with outside of the software. So if I were to go into a software such as Photoshop, I'm going to need to organize the UV islands or shells so that I can paint those. So let's take a look at doing this. I'm going to click on my modifier tab, go into the modifier list, and just type U. So we go down to the unwrap UVW. With this applied to the teapot, we have a few things that we can work with. So again, this is going to be a little bit longer tutorial. I'm going to probably have to break it up into at least 3. So over here we have selections that we can use in the viewport. And then if I click on Open UVW Editor, UV Editor, then we have the same sort of selections that I can do in this UV 0 to 1 space, or the UV Editor. So within here we have the choice to select by polygon, by edge, and vert. I also can pick by element. So if I click here, I'll get the full element. I can do the same thing in the viewport. So these are the controls for that. So if I click to select by polygon, edge, I'll have to hit an edge, and vert, same sort of thing, I have to make sure I hit one. I can change my viewport to show edge faces, so they're easier to grab. I can also select by element, and now when I click, let's say polygon, now I get the full element. Now all these green lines that we see, these are our seams, and this is how the software defines where the edges are cut in your shell to flatten those out. So right now we have multiple shells or islands sitting on top of each other. And we're going to pull this over to the side and just talk for a second about what is a 0 to 1 space. What is our UV space? So with your UVW unwrap modifier, we have a UV coordinate opposed to an XYZ coordinate. So when you're dealing with the material, we're dealing with really like the surface or the skin of the object, opposed to the actual geometry that builds the object. So it's hard to understand that they're two different things. But what we're able to do is we're able to go and stretch the skin out so it's easier to paint on, and export a map so we can bring it into a Photoshop or some other software and paint our materials, and then reapply it to the 3D object. So just to make you aware, we have XYZ in the 3D space, UVW for the skin. So when I go this direction, I'm going in U, this direction is V, and then going in depth, so through the map, is W. And there are some procedural 3D maps. When we go to paint our maps, generally they're 2D, so you only have U and V, no W in that. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take this, which is currently an overlapping map, and we're going to pack it into the 0 to 1 space. Now a lot of software can only read maps in the 0 to 1 space, where other software can read it outside. So this one is larger than the 0 to 1 space, and if I were to bring this into a software that doesn't support out of 0 to 1, then it wouldn't be able to read the maps on this area. Just keep that in mind. So right now I'm just going to click Custom Pack, and what 3ds Max has done is it's gone in, taken all the maps, add a little bit of padding, so we have 0.2 padding so it doesn't go all the way to the edge, so we don't accidentally cut off any of the maps, and it's packed it into this space for painting. The only problem with the way that the software has packed it is I really don't know what I'm trying to paint. So it's actually flattened things out very nicely, but I'm going to have to organize things in a way that I can, go into Photoshop and know I'm painting on this surface or this surface, and then be able to make a continuous line around certain areas maybe. So that's what we're going to be taking a look at. Okay, so again, we have this packed, and there are different ways to pack. We're going to look at some of the other ways, but that's the idea behind this, is generating a map that we can paint on. So this is the way that 3ds Max has cut this object. We can delete those cuts or recut it in a different manner, but we'll just take a look at it with this configuration right now. So I'm going to pull this out of the 0 to 1 so we can start working in the 0 to 1 space. I'm going to come in and select by polygon and have it by element, so it selects the whole element, and I am going to just click, turn off by element, just click so I know which map we're looking at in the space. So I want to grab this first lid piece, and I want to use this and start lining them up and pack them into the 0 to 1. So I want to select this by element. If I click it again, now I have it by element. I'm going to zoom out and just pull it over near the 0 to 1, and I'm going to do it for each section. So we're here, and I'm going to want to put this one on the opposite side of it. So again, I've selected one polygon, and now when I click here, I have the whole element, and I'm going to move that into position. Now we want the one on the other side of this. Click, I get the whole element, we'll move it over. Whole element, move that over. And when it's selected, it's actually working. Sometimes for some reasons, my display has not been showing the blue edge. So what this means is this is the edge touching this edge, and the other one is the edge touching this edge. So what we're going to do is we're going to attach these together. And to do that, I'm going to use the stitching. So first I'm going to take a look at the different settings here. So we can stitch to target. So I have it try to take this island or shell and stretch it over to the second one, and I'm going to undo that. And then we have a similar thing, but we have to select, instead of the element, I want to go and just select an edge. And I'm going to double click to get the whole edge loop. Yeah, now my software is displaying. It might stop. It hasn't been displaying real well recently. Okay, and then it highlights the edge that it will attach to. And then this one is going to do kind of the same thing. It takes that edge and they attach them. Undo. This one is going to take this island and attach it back to the source. Undo. And then this is the one I tend to use, a custom stitch. And what this does is it repositions both islands next to each other and stitches them together, which is the most useful in this situation. So I'm going to double click, get the next, and do the same. Oops, grab the wrong loop. Let's undo. And we'll stitch. And by having it this way, I know when I paint a line that I'm going across the entire, cap of this. So now we can go to the next section. So same thing, I'm just going to come in and grab one polygon. And then in this view, I'm going to select the whole island. You can see the other ones highlight that are attached. And I'm going to slide it into position. And select the next. Let's see if I can get a good polygon there. Again, move that over. Next one. and move all these. So even though they are attached to this, I'm going to attach them to each other. We're not going to be able to stitch every single seam together. It's going to deform. But I just want to have a nice straight, map going across so it's easier to paint. So I'm going to go in and pick edge, turn off element, and do the same thing that we just did. Double click and stitch. And just keep using that custom stitch until we get all 4 sections back together. Now you'll see we do have some cuts because this is still open at the top. And now if I select by element, I can scoot them in a more organized way where I can know that this is the cap and this is the handle for the cap. Once we're done doing that for all of this, we're going to go in and render a UV template, and then we can go into Photoshop and paint it. So I'm going to shut this video off real quick and do that for you, line them all up in the 0 to 1 space, and then show you how to export this.